Well, hey, good to see that you joined me from TikTok. Or did you happen to already be following me on Facebook or YouTube or one of those things? Well, if you're here now and you're bothering to follow along, I hope that the name of this particular YouTube video got your attention. Because, yes, we're going to do a small dive into Lyndon B. Johnson, who he was, and what he said so long ago that it's offensive and very belittling, and it's bothersome that he said what he said. But I don't want people to have short form arguments. I want to do the actual research and just see what comes up. So we're going to do it, and at the moment, my first computer is 7% of the way through doing an update, and I'm just not willing to wait for it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use my tablet. Like my drawing? It's a neat little drawing. Anyway, I'm going to use my tablet to find what Lyndon B. Johnson said. And I'm going to try using something called Bixby. Let's see if Bixby is up here, because if I can use Bixby, then things get so much easier for me. Okay, so I go to Bixby. It's this Bixby thing. It's like a AI assistant, kind of like Siri or the OK Google. Assistant can't start while another app is using the microphone. Okay. Wants a it wants me to sign into a Samsung account, so just gonna um that is a old number. Tell you what, use that one instead. Yeah, I mean, I don't need to be tied to a phone number for this. I probably should have started this a little more prepared, but that great. Now it wants me to verify a phone number that I don't have. Um, so I guess I'm not gonna use Bixby, which is a shame because I was hoping he would just say out loud what I was Google finding, and then you could know that it's not just me pulling up a picture or something. Um, so we'll do this instead. I'm gonna hold this here, and I'm going to ask Google. What did Lyndon B. Johnson say about getting the black vote for 200 years and using the N word? Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to go to the very first link and see what's up here. And I'm going to call out the thing out loud so that you can go to it yourself. socialsecurityadministration.gov. It is https the two dots slash slash www.ssa.gov lbj lbj. I click on it. Lyndon B. Johnson tapes. I'm assuming that's just the tapes about Lyndon B. Johnson. Lyndon B. Johnson, library photos, additional photos of him on the phone in the Oval Office. Throughout his presidency, Lyndon Johnson surreptitiously recorded his telephone conversations. President Johnson intended that these recordings would not be open to researchers until 50 years after his death. However, in 1992, Congress passed legislation requiring release of most available information on President Kennedy's assassination. In response, the LBJ Library released President Johnson's phone conversations on this topic. Following the release of the Kennedy related material in 93 and 94, the library decided that the ban on released materials had effectively been broken. A decision was made to gradually open remaining materials to scholars and interested members of the public. These recordings provide a rare look behind the scenes of the inner workings of government policy making. Let's see, the full set of recordings are available through the Miller Center for Public Affairs. And here's different things. Let's see. Let's see if we can find his quote. Okay. I'm not seeing which phone call conversation, which they're recorded. I don't think it was a phone call conversation. I think it was a conversation inside the White House office. Mm, wow, he had lots of phone calls. I mean, we're doing all of this live. This is not to be edited, so that's why it's going to take me a minute. Of course, this has the year, the time, how long it took. So, what I'm going to do to make this quicker is, well, I kind of want this search to be saved. When? What year, what day did Lyndon B. Johnson say, I'll have the Democratic? Okay. Date Lyndon B. Johnson said, I'll have the black vote for 200 years. Okay. So, God forbid this is a Sega link on Twitter, but I want to see what this post is because it looks ultra fancy and. Okay, no, Sega Link is actually a person. Sega Link. And he's black, so he can say it, but it's going to look backwards on video. There's a guy, at symbol, Segalink, Sega. He says, okay, so I'm going to say word for word everything except the quote, because we know the quote. I've almost said it a few times. If black people are going to vote, they might as well vote for Democrats. As President Lyndon Johnson, 1936. That's me. That's me. That's not the quote. If black people are going to vote, they might as well vote Democrats. As President Lyndon Johnson, 1963-1969, was purported to have said about the Civil Rights Act. I'll have them voting Democrat for 200 years. That is the quote. But even with a black person saying it, I need to know where he said it. So let's find. It was about the Civil Rights Act. So let's check cspan.org. It has a statement here. Let's get cspan.org to open up. Okay. The presidency, the Johnson White House, tapes and civil rights. Okay. So let's look at this. Read more. I tapped read more. Doesn't look like it's loading or anything. There's a read more tab. I'm actively tapping it. It's not letting me read more. I feel like I'm missing something here. User created clips from this video. So I'm just going to tap the this little link down here. Just can't get any of these things to do anything. That's David Carter.
Volume in this 2-volume set that Kent Germany and I have worked on together. And the focus, as the title indicates, is on the civil rights activity, both the Civil Rights Bill as it heads towards final passage and the disappearance of Michael Schwerner, Andrew Goodman, and James Chaney in Mississippi. If anyone has questions about the title Mississippi Burning, we'll be happy to touch on those during question and answer, but I want to stress that the book was not named after a very, I think, slightly pernicious Hollywood film, Mississippi Burning, which a lot of civil rights veterans have expressed, I think, well-founded concerns about the accuracy and the overall intent of that film, as powerful a piece of drama as it is. I want to stress as I play probably just one clip for you. I think I'm going to play a clip from the FBI Director J. Edgar Hoover in just a moment. But I want all of us to keep in mind as we talk about what's happening in the early summer of 1964, just how nonlinear many of these conversations are. Lyndon Johnson will one moment be talking about trying to achieve peace between Greece and Turkey and Cyprus. In the period where the 3 civil rights workers are abducted and murdered in Mississippi, Johnson is also juggling all sorts of activity in Vietnam. Henry Cabot Lodge is out as ambassador. Maxwell Taylor is in. General William Westmoreland literally has just taken over control of the Military Assistance Command Vietnam 2 days before the civil rights disappearances. So there's a tremendous amount going on. And as Guillen said, also debates about the excise tax, the debt ceiling. So as you think about Johnson, it would be easy to imagine that he's completely consumed by the disappearances of these three civil rights workers, but he's having to multitask in an incredibly complicated way. The Civil Rights Act has finally made it through the Senate after a really brutal effort to break the Southern Bloc filibuster of 18 Southern Democrats and one Republican who had attempted to block that. So the Civil Rights Act is headed towards final passage, and Lyndon Johnson.
So y'all got that right. The Democrats, like Lyndon B. Johnson, tried to block the Civil Rights Act, and only one Republican tried to block it. Whatever the reason that all of these Democrats tried to block the Civil Rights Act, these tapes are going to be discussing it and should probably have that quote somewhere in the tapes. So we're going to listen to all of it here, and when I get it, I will actually put the timestamp down in the bottom for people who just need to hear it and move on.
Johnson will sign it about 9 or 10 days after the disappearance of the Mississippi Three. For those who don't know as much about it, this is Freedom Summer. This was the Council of Federated Organizations, a group of umbrella organization of African American led civil rights groups, seeking to effectively bring the law to Mississippi by bringing Northern white and some African American Northern volunteers to Mississippi with the idea that their lives in some sense mattered more, and that if there were acts of violence against those, they would draw the nation's eye to Mississippi. And tragically, that did happen. It's also the summer that by the end of the summer, Fannie Lou Hamer would be a household name. In a clip that's available on the website and that is in this volume, you hear Senator James Eastland of Mississippi refer to that, quote, Negro woman from Ruleville, and essentially accuse her of being a bald-faced liar when she has testified that she's been shot at 19 times, and he says she's never been shot at a single time. She's a liar. And during this conversation that Lyndon Johnson has with Senator James Eastland, where he's attempting to ascertain what the white authorities in Mississippi know about the disappearances, essentially Eastland says this whole thing has been cooked up as a publicity stunt. He has information that suggests that, in fact, the civil rights workers called about their disappearance before they had even gotten to their destination in Philadelphia. And so you see Eastland working very hard to suggest that, again, this is just a publicity stunt. And Eastland winds up mediating a call between himself and Governor Paul Johnson Jr. of Mississippi. Lyndon Johnson really would prefer not to talk to the governor. And so Eastland calls, and this is the same Paul Johnson.
Keep in mind, Eastland is a Democrat. He's saying that this black lady is lying about being shot at. He's saying he has evidence that these people who are missing are not missing. Blah, 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 blah. Democrat. Going against the black people now.
Johnson Jr., who on the campaign trail referred to the NAACP as the N-word, alligators, apes, coons, and possums, denied widespread accounts of hunger in Mississippi by saying that, quote, all the Negro women that I see are so fat that they shine. So you really get a sense of a deep-seated white supremacy on the part of Mississippi's white political leadership. Senator Eastland himself, when confronted with evidence about the discriminating impact of the poll tax, accused Virginia Durr, who was advocating for the abolition of the poll tax some period before this. He said, I know what you all want. It's black men laying on you. So there's that poisonous nexus of sex and race and violence in Mississippi that, despite Eastland's protestations, it becomes very clear in a phone call from Lee White. Lyndon.
This guy is saying all this stuff, quoting phone calls with Lyndon B. Johnson and a book. This is recordings that have been made into even a book. Records and things being discussed with Lyndon B. Johnson and about a book. And that's why he said chapter 3 earlier. I have to apologize. I didn't realize how bad all of this language was going to be. But let's keep in mind, because it is bad, terrible, horrible language that this guy is quoting, that everyone involved quoting this horrible language are Democrats against the all of all of these things that are helping people. They're calling this black lady a liar. They don't want the good new politics to come down the pipe, and they're making all kinds of racist, sexist accusations. And they're, wow. If you want to vote Democrat, then you should have no problem with this because they're all Democrats saying these things. But we're going to keep going because that's not the quote you're here to hear.
Lyndon Johnson's close advisor, he says these civil rights workers have simply disappeared from the face of the earth. So the period of time that in just a moment Kent Germany will be talking about, Lyndon Johnson is wrestling with whether to communicate directly with the relatives of the missing 3 civil rights workers. And he really gives a lot of thought to the implications. If he starts meeting with the families of every civil rights martyr, what will that do? And reading through some of these transcripts and listening to the tapes, I don't think it shows Lyndon Johnson that is most attractive. He sounds a little bit like he's whining when in fact we know the horror and the anguish that these families are going through. But I just wanted to play very quickly a call from J. Edgar Hoover to Lyndon Johnson that's occasioned by the discovery of the station wagon in which the 3 civil rights workers had been driving. J. Edgar Hoover, the director of the FBI, we know was no friend of the civil rights movement, but due to the particular set of circumstances with these murders, the FBI and Hoover are reluctantly drawn into a greater role in civil rights activity in Mississippi. And there's a really interesting backstory where Lyndon Johnson is insisting that, in fact, he's dispatched lots of FBI forces into Mississippi before the disappearances, and historians are still wrestling with how much of this is true. But there's no question that upon the disappearances of the 3, the FBI, for the first time, really does descend into Mississippi. Many would argue far too little.
I would say, like a true Democrat, Lyndon B. Johnson is saying, he sent tons of investigators into that location before people went missing. Why would you do that? That doesn't help the investigation. They weren't looking for anything. Why would you do that? That doesn't make any sense. That doesn't aid in finding the missing people. And that goes right along with good for you. But of course, no one seems to be able to substantiate that claim by Lyndon B. Johnson, a Democrat. And as you can tell from the theme of what he's saying, no one wants to help these people who are for everyone, you know. And it's the Democrats in office, but they don't seem to want to help. Anyway, we'll keep going.
And far too late. So, David, if you could play the clip.
Mr. President, I wanted to let you know we found the car. Yeah. Now, this is not known. Nobody knows this at all. But the car was burned, and we do not know yet whether any bodies are inside of the car because of the intense heat that still is in the area of the car. The license plates on the car are the same that was on the car that was in Philadelphia, Mississippi yesterday. And apparently, this is off to the side of the road. It wasn't going toward Meridian, but it's going in the opposite direction. Now, whether anybody's in the car, we won't know until we can get into the car ourselves. We've got agents, of course, on the ground, and as soon as we get definite word, I'll, of course, get word to you. But I did want you to know that apparently what's happened, these men have been killed. Although, as I say, we can't tell whether anybody's in there in view of the intense heat. Well, now, what would make you think they've been killed? Because of the fact that it is the same car that they were in Philadelphia, Mississippi, and the same license number is on the outside of the car. Now, as I say, the heat is so intense you can't tell on the inside that everything's been burned, whether any charred bodies or not. It is merely an assumption that probably they were burned in the car. On the other hand, they may have been taken out and killed on the outside. Or maybe kidnapped and locked up. How's that? Or maybe kidnapped and locked up. Well, I would doubt whether those people down there would even give them that much of a break. But of course, we're going to go into that very thoroughly. Not only as to the fact as to whether they're still alive, if they're not in the car, then they may have been killed and their bodies buried in one of those swamps down there.
And as it turned out, of course, the bodies had been buried in that earthen dam and were discovered some weeks later during the search for the bodies. Other civil rights or other unrelated disappearances, victims surfaced in the search. The one thing I would say in follow-up is that the governor of Mississippi, Paul Johnson Jr., again continued to play out this narrative of a publicity stunt. He was joined by George Wallace at a press conference where Johnson and Wallace sort of looked at each other and winked and said, Governor Wallace is the only, he and I are the only people who know where these missing people are, and we're not telling. So there was, again, in retrospect, what was a very surreal attempt to suggest that the civil rights workers had staged their own disappearances. Even 6 years after the murders, Governor Paul Johnson, in an oral history, insisted that the Klansmen who killed Schwerner, Goodman, and Cheney had no intention of killing them. He spun this bizarre narrative that they were going to hang them from a cotton sack in a tree just to teach them a lesson for a day and a half, but then...
Keep in mind, the Klansmen, the KKK, was founded by Democrats, ran by Democrats, they voted Democrat, they were Democrat, and they were against all this freedom stuff.
Quote, the Negro boy from Meridian, this would have been James Cheney, the ringleader, Paul Johnson said, started acting kind of smart aleck. And he said an enraged Klansman at that point hit him with a trace chain, quote, killed him dead as a nit. And this is 6 years, again, after the murders. You find the governor talking in a sort of very light-handed way about one of the greatest tragedies in the civil rights era. So I'll turn things over to Kent Germany, who will continue in this vein.
Now, I know I keep stopping this and hounding away that the bad people in this storyline are the Democrats. That does not stop you from going to this or any other website and determining that those names voted D for Democrat or R for Republican. Feel free to go and do your independent fact checks. But I'm listening to him. I know who's in charge. I know who's following who. And I know who were against the Civil Rights Acts. And I know who the KKK were. I'm putting all those things together. But you can find out for yourself that the KKK was founded by the Democrats. That the KKK usually voted Democrat. And the KKK were typically Southern police militia Democrats. And Lyndon B. Johnson was Democrat. And none of these people liked civil rights. They really didn't seem to want black people to be voting. And just like when they thought that these civil rights activist people were missing, even Lyndon B. Johnson was hitting very hard. No, 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 they've been kidnapped. They are not dead. Why it was so offensive to just assume they could be dead, I don't know. But instead, he's just determined that there is also the option that they're just being held somewhere, which turns out he was wrong. And without showing any urgency enough to, have started this sooner, maybe they would have been alive if they'd have had government, security helping them get down there safely. But we'll see what this next part's about, because I'm still waiting to hear the quote that people were saying. Okay, well, maybe that's the one clip. Okay.
What's been a very labor-intensive project, and thank
Let's see if there's anything else here. Their 3-volume book, Toward the Great Society, The Presidential Recordings of Lyndon B. Johnson. Now let's take a look at other things to see if I can get a quote or an actual sound clip it. I'd love to hear the sound clip it. Hmm. When did Lyndon B. Johnson say you'll have the Negro vote for 200 years? Negro vote. Okay. Okay, I'm actively looking at intellectual takeout. Did Lyndon B. Johnson say, I'll have those N-word voting Democrat for 200 years? For reasons that obvious at a recent editorial meeting, topic of conversation swung towards the most shocking things said by U.S. presidents. Lyndon B. Johnson, a beer-swilling, blunt-speaking Texan, didn't shy away from using what today we refer to as the N-word, one sentence often attributed to LBJ, which he gained great fame on the internet for. I'll have those voting Democrat for 200 years. The line is often trotted out to allege that civil rights legislation LBJ pushed and ultimately signed was motivated not by altruism but cynical ploy to lock up votes. Did LBJ really say that? Someone asked at our meeting. I said I believe the source of the quote was historian Doris Kearns Godwin's biography of LBJ, Lyndon B. Johnson and the American Dream, and that she was pretty credible source. Let's see. The source was not Goodwin, however. I had confused that LBJ quote with this one. No, I reckon I can say Negroes. That's a old timey one, but these Negroes, they're getting pretty uppity these days, and that's a problem for us since they've got something now they never had before, the political pull to back up their uppityness. Now we've got to do something about this. We've got to give them a little something, just enough to quiet them down, not enough to make a difference. So, this quote appears on page 155 of Goodwin's LBJ biography. The utterance was made to Richard Russell, a fellow Democratic senator from Georgia. The source of the 200 years quote is Ronald Kessler's 1995 book, Inside the White House. Kessler got the quote from Robert McMillan, an Air Force One steward, who said LBJ uttered this moment to two governors during a conversation on the Civil Rights Act of 1964. Snopes, a fact-checking site, states there's little evidence to back up the quote, which is a strange claim since Snopes admits the quote wouldn't have been entirely out of character. And quite frankly, considering that we already have this quote up here showing how he feels about black people, I doubt that it was hard for him to say the other quote. But seeing as how the quote does come down to a biography and a book, I'm going to assume I'm probably not going to have audio. But again, I will say it one more time because it's not the hard E, it's the O's, and this is the quote Lyndon B. Johnson did say. And let's keep in mind, to be fair to the Democrats, people were still saying Negro a lot. And that was the N word back then. People were still offended by that. You couldn't just be called a person. Negro meaning black. These Negroes, they're getting pretty uppity these days, and that's a problem for us since they've got something now they've never had before, the political pull to back up their uppityness. That is Democrat President Lyndon B. Johnson. You can find this on Intellectual Takeout. Intellectual Takeout. So, it seems a shame I don't have an actual dirty smoking gun for the hard R quote, but it links us to where you would be able to find the book or read the other things. I'll say it one more time. Oh, this actually went into a number of things. Kessler's source is historically sound and a first-hand account from an eyewitness. So this particular statement that we're looking for, the 200 years thing, was backed up with eyewitnesses. And LBJ's pattern of racism and rhetoric towards African Americans, his fondness for the use of the word is well documented, cast some doubt on the idea that his motivations on civil rights were altruistic. Lucy Baines Johnson, who likely heard her father use racial epithets, would have motivation to deny racial utterances she might have made. Goodwin's quote confirms that LBJ possessed a well honed political calculus on the issue of civil rights. If LBJ said what Macmillan claimed, Macmillan's editorializing comments, which Snopes frowned upon, make sense. Numerous historians have LBJ on the record referring to the Civil Rights Act of 1957 as the Inward Bill. The Inward Bill. Now, I realize these things are backwards. It's stuff you're going to have to look up. It's independent research and independent thought. You're going to have to do this one yourself. But looking up these things, it shows that I'm not just spewing it. It's not just lies. It's factual historical documentation. This has been on this site for a while. Before that, it came out of books. Those books were biographies. No one in the family's ever said that those biographies were a lie. No one's ever refuted them. They've never been pulled off of shelves. There was never a lawsuit. This is factual things. Okay? So while they're factual things, and while things like that clip have never been pulled because it's factual, the Democrat Party, who made the KKK, who were against the civil rights, also have people like Hillary Clinton, who were fired for being a lawyer, who was lying too much, and people like the Clintons in general, who took the money from Haiti, and Haiti is still waiting for it. People like Joe Biden, who was quoted in saying a whole bunch of things about, black people. And I just thought I would get to the bottom of Lyndon B. Johnson's real quick. And I could probably go a much deeper dive and actually buy the two biographies and read them word for word for you, but I'm not going to go quite that far. This is a 2-minute video in which I've actually made a genuine attempt to find something, and this is all credible research based on biographies that were never pulled, never accused of lying or any such thing, and while staying on the shelves and not being pulled for being fake, these biographies quoting these statements are being held to be true at least 30 years later. I don't know how long ago they came out. I'm relatively sure it's been 60 or 70 years, but even when this hit the internet, it's never been pulled because it's factual. It's as solid as it can be, and it's based from those biographies. So that's Lyndon B. Johnson, a Democrat, being racist way back in the day and voting against the Civil Rights Act. And last minute realizing since he's not going to win and get his way anyway, might as well pander to them. Give them a little something, but not enough to make a difference. Doesn't that make you sick? Doesn't that make you sick to be used, abused, mistreated, lied to? I mean, I'm not black, but I can't stand the idea. Sickening. While we're on the topic, though, of Democrats lying to you, let's do a little more research. Racist things Hillary Clinton said about black people. Okay, very first thing that came up was WashingtonPost.com. Again, WashingtonPost.com. What I am reading says Clinton regrets 1996 remark on super predators after encounter with activist. Oh, after encounter with activist. Oh, it's kind of like how when you get caught stealing, oh, you're super sorry and you super regret you were caught shoplifting. Oh, and you had your hand in the cookie jar and you got caught. Oh, you're super sorry. Mm. So as she said what she said, she's getting called out for it, and she doesn't like that. She doesn't like being called out for it. I'll read the article. Columbia, South Carolina black voters are in the linchpin of Hillary Clinton's strategy for winning the South Carolina Democratic presidential primary, and as a result, her campaign has put racial justice issues at the forefront of her agenda. But at an event on Wednesday night, Clinton was vocally confronted by an activist questioning her past support for policies that had disproportionately negative effect on African Americans. Ashley Williams, a 23-year-old activist from Charlotte, interrupted Clinton during a private fundraiser at Charleston on Wednesday night. Williams stood and demanded an apology from Clinton for the high incarceration rate for black Americans and confronted her with the words of a speech Clinton delivered 20 years ago, voicing support for the now debunked theory of super predators. They are often the kind of kids that are called super predators, Clinton said in 1996 in the height of anxiety during her husband's administration about high rates of crime and violence. No conscience, no empathy. We can talk about why they ended up that way, but first we have to bring them to heel. The last part of the quote was written on a large, hand lettered sign that Williams held up as Clinton spoke to her donors and supporters. Clinton took note of the sign and read it aloud, squinting to read it and apparently unaware that it was her own quote. Williams addressed Clinton, asking whether Clinton would apologize to black people for mass incarceration. Williams added, "I am not a super predator, Hillary Clinton." Clinton first told Williams, "We'll talk about it," but grew irritated as Williams continued to speak. "Do you want to hear the facts, or do you just want to talk?" Clinton asked sharply. Off camera, guests at the fundraiser, apparently held in a private home, can be heard saying "shh," which then turns to such comments as "this is inappropriate" and "you're being rude." Williams again asked about Clinton's words from 1996 as a man approached Williams to escort her out. So even all the Democrat people crowding up the room didn't want this black girl to ask for an apology. "You know what? Nobody's ever asked me before. You're the first person to do that, and I'm happy to address it," Clinton said, but did not elaborate. She also didn't want to talk about it right then either. In a written response to the Washington Post, Jonathan Capehart on the issue Thursday, Clinton said, "Looking back, I shouldn't have used those words, and I shouldn't use them today. My life's work has been about lifting up children and young people who've been let down by the system and by society's kids who never got the chance they deserved." Clinton continued in the statement, "And unfortunately today, there were too many of those kids, especially in African American communities. We haven't done right by them. We need to. We need to end the school to prison pipeline and replace it with cradle to college pipeline." Good words if you've had 24 hours plus to find them. In an interview Thursday, Williams said she wanted Clinton to address her past role in supporting the country's current system of mass incarceration. Williams also said she sought an apology from Clinton for the damage she's done to black communities. I thought that quote was important not only because it was her own words, but because that was her pathologizing black youth as these criminals, animal people, Williams told the Washington Post. "And we know that's not right, and we know that's really racist. I wanted her to be confronted with the very racist thing she said," said Williams. A crime bill from 1994 haunts Clinton and Sanders as criminal justice reform rises to the top of Democratic contest. As a black queer person, I understand how I don't always get to be in control of how I'm perceived in spaces, Williams said. I'm especially not always in control when I'm perceived when I'm raising my voice to speak out against injustices. So I'm not surprised that I was told I was being rude. But I gotta be honest, and this is me talking, not them. If you want an apology because someone's being really racist, you standing up to ask for an apology, not being violent, genuinely asking for an apology, shouldn't be rude. The person being racist was rude. And that was all of this is on the Washington Post. And it's about words that Hillary Clinton actually said. And then she turned around and endorsed Obama once she just couldn't win running for president. Because she's happy living her overly wealthy life with all of these things she's done in the past not coming back to really haunt her at all. She didn't even actually give a genuine apology. She had time to sit down, think about it, and then make her apology to a journalism thing instead of on the spot deal with it. And the other people in the room, the other Democrats, were going to make this black lady leave because she was rude. What did Joe Biden say about black people that was racist? This is going to be a long one. The Heritage Foundation at heritage.org. Okay. Let's take a look. Let's see here. Keep going. On Charlemagne, the God's popular morning radio show in May 2020, Biden infamously asserted to the large black audience that if you were unsure whether to vote for him or Trump, then you ain't black. August 2020, Biden told a gathering of black and Hispanic journalists that, unlike the African American community, with notable exceptions, the Latino community is an incredibly diverse community with incredibly different attitudes about different things. Okay. Taken together, these statements clearly suggest that Biden believes all black people think alike. In the same interview, responding to a question on whether he had taken a cognitive test, Biden angrily fired back with the suggestion that the black reporter was a drug addict. It's right here. That's like saying you, before you got in this program, take SIC, a test, whether you're taking cocaine or not. Biden said, "What do you think? Huh? Are you a junkie?" Put these words into Mitch McConnell's mouth and try to envision how long he'd be allowed to remain in the Senate, let alone the leadership position. But Biden has been getting away with this for years. In 2010, he warmly eulogized Senator Robert Byrd, a former exalted cyclops of the Ku Klux Klan, saying he was one of my mentors and that the Senate is a lesser place for him going. In 2007, he referred to Barack Obama as the first mainstream African American who is articulate, bright, and clean. Okay, I'm not educated, but I know at the very least Will Smith and his family were on TV before Barack Obama, and his Uncle Phil was a very articulate and clean man at the very least. But okay, okay, we'll just keep going down this list of things that he said because y'all want him to be president. Just know what your president has said. In 2006, Joe Biden said, "You cannot go to a 7-Eleven or a Dunkin' Donuts unless you have a slight Indian accent." Way back in 1977, he said that forced busing to desegregate schools would cause his children to grow up in a racial jungle. Can't believe it. Oh my God! Of course he got the black vote. Of course, he infamously worked with segregationist senators to oppose that mandatory busing, which decades later led to the strongest moment in Kamala Harris's campaign for the president, when she blasted him as having personally impacted her as a young girl. And over the course of his entire career, he had kind words to say about staunchly segregationist senators. Any one of these statements or episodes would have been enough to sink the political career of any conservative in Washington, D.C., against whom tenuous accusations of racism are commonplace and occur almost daily without proof. I'm ad-libbing that without proof part because I've not seen proof. But Joe Biden, who has a lifetime of them and is now President of the United States, and on some days and in some ways, it must be good to be on the left. Let's see. They've quoted him using the racist N word in 1985 and in 1970. I mean, there's just tons of this. There even Joe Biden apologizes for comments on racial diversity amongst African Americans. Joe Biden's racist answer on the legacy of slavery. So, if Trump had said any of this, there would have been a record. But there's no record of Trump saying anything like this. So can we stop calling Trump racist right this minute? Let's look up the lady who lived in Trump Towers, rent free and got free meals. She was a homeless black lady. Homeless black lady allowed to stay in Trump Tower, free rent, free food. Let's see. I mean, it was so long ago.
All right, y'all, we are back with another video. Shout out to the comment section,
This is
man. Y'all
not
been
the
showing me a
original
lot of
video.
love. Y'all been sending me a lot of these videos and stuff like that.
I think he's gonna play the video though.
All type of stuff to try to keep this man from running next year. That's all this is what here's about. They're trying to keep Trump from running. They don't want him to run. He already.
See, I'm in my pajamas. There's Central Park right there. And that tall building is the Essex House on Central Park West, near 59th Street. I came in here about 9 years ago and snuck in the building and just started occupying one of the empty rooms in here. By the time our housekeeper noticed I was here the next day, she called the manager and they called the New York City police.
I mean, they would, yeah.
Who came up here and told me I had to leave or I would be arrested. When I told them I would not go, they contacted Mr. Trump over the phone, and he came down here. Instead of him evicting me off the property, he said that I can stay. And it's been 8 years I've been here. Not only did he not evict me off the property, he makes sure that I get 3 meals a day.
Dang.
Wow.
By room service, and that I get a delivery of fresh flowers every week.
Wow, that's amazing.
So you people, not a bad guy at all. If it weren't for him, I'd be homeless, I'd be dead right now. I'd be in the street. I asked him how am I going to pay him back for all of this, and he told me I can pay him back whenever I get it, which is never.
That's a lot of rent. That's a lot of food.
I
9
have
years?
no idea why he did this with me. It's been 9 years, and I've been here for totally free, and I haven't paid a dime.
That's amazing. Shout out to Trump.
Donald Trump is not a bad guy. He's a wonderful, wonderful man. And everything I'm telling you today is true. Goodbye.
That right there was amazing. Like she said, like Trump didn't have to do that. He could have told them that she had to go and all type of stuff, but he did. He let her stay there rent free for over 8 years, no charge. She got flowers every week. He made sure she ate 3 times a day. That right there is just truly, truly, truly amazing. I'm glad he didn't make her get out. And like I said, she would have been back.
Now, this video, he's made this in 2023, but the original video that ended up on YouTube of the disabled lady ended up on YouTube back in the 2020s. It was an attempt at everyone was calling him racist, and she didn't like it when he first decided to run for president. Because from the very get-go, people have not liked Trump. She definitely seems a little slow, and she definitely sounds like she might be disabled, or that she's struggling for breath, which makes you disabled. whatever truly makes her disabled enough to be the homeless that she is, she won't be homeless because Trump didn't care about her race, didn't care about money. He went down there, he saw her in person, saw she was in need, and chose to help. Now, I don't care what anyone says about, you know, that being one person. It was so long ago that there's no way he was planning to be president. He was quoted talking to Oprah saying he didn't ever want to be president, ever. Because Oprah told him to run for president a long time ago, while he was still Democrat, by the way. And he had no interest. He said, the nation would have to be horribly messed up for him to run for president. And of course, here we are, the nation horribly messed up, and we're running for president. That's it for tonight. Hopefully this is the first of many YouTube videos.
Stuff like that. But man,
I would like to credit the real A Dog. I'd like to give credit to this guy. Hold on. No. Stop. I'd like to give credit to the real A Dog, or A Dog, for that clip out of his YouTube video. I'm doing it not for me, not for my benefit. I'm not making any money, any profits, no advertisements, no things where they send you money or food or anything. I am just trying to straighten it out and do the independent thought and background check research that no one else seems to want to do. In case you've been sent here because you were already a mindful, independent thought doing person, I want to apologize for how horribly unprepared I am, not being able to immediately pull things up. But this is the process of doing things, and of course it'll get faster the more that I do them. But at the moment I'm still trying to find a swing. I just decided I was going to come here from TikTok and start doing things a little bit better than the "you're wrong and your mom's a whore" argument. It's very hard to convey why the Democrat Party is wrong in a few simple words. And it's a shame that quite often I use as many words as I'm able to write in a TikTok comment, and they go, "That's a lot of words. I'm not reading them." Or, "Wow, big words." They don't even bother reading. They don't bother discussing. And I think a lot of it is that they don't care to. Things like TikTok have turned their brain into mush. They're sheeps. They don't know how to have an intelligent argument. They have no problem saying that Trump took documents from the White House, but when Biden did it, oh, no, 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 totally different. No, 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 no. And at the same time, Trump was not found guilty. Biden was found incompetent and unable to be charged. But still somehow, though incompetent, still competent enough to run this country. So there's a lot of differences left and right, and it just takes a lot of independent thought, fact checking, to get to where we're at with these things. Hopefully my next YouTube video will be better. I appreciate you following me and supporting the channel by liking or sharing or subscribing. I apologize that this is not a tool video or a gun video, but since people seem to be completely incapable of doing independent thought and research now, I figured I would take a swing at it for them. Send this to a Democrat, a liberal, a third-party person that really needs to hear it. If you've seen this, send it to someone who needs to hear it. Okay, someone who would refuse to do the independent thought and the independent research themselves, because I've done it. Okay, and again, I showed you every page I was pulling up as I was pulling them up. They should still be available tomorrow. And all of this stuff is actively, you can pull it up from Google, and Google is ultra Democrat liberal left. Wow. So if they won't censor it, it's because they can't. The truth is the truth is the truth is the truth. And with that, it is too damn early in the morning. I hope y'all have a great day. I've got to go to bed. Good night.